So here we are. In just a few days, we're going to celebrate the birth of Jesus. And notice I said celebrate. We do a lot of celebrating here at Unity, don't we? We love that, celebrating, because even Charles Fillmore, our co-founder of Unity, along with his wife Myrtle, he said this. He said, religion should make us joyful. God is not to be served in a spirit of bondage, but in a spirit of joy. Don't you love that? We should be joyful when we come together, especially on Sundays, and when we talk about God, just really be in that very joyful place. And I can't think of anything better that inspires joy than music. Right? All the music that we've heard this morning, and you still have a lot more to come. So, but doesn't that fill you with joy as well? Listening to the music and singing together. And that's why music is so important here at Unity of Bellevue. I minister to you during, on every Sunday through the message and meditation, but David and his music team and our choir, they minister to us, through music that opens our hearts, and music that almost always is perfect for the service. It complements it beautifully. And so today, as we're talking about joy, which is the fourth Sunday of Advent, since we're talking about joy, we're experiencing so much music during the service, I wanted to take a moment to share with you the story of Isaac Watts. Isaac Watts, he was an 18-year-old young man who dared to criticize the church that he was in, which happened to be the Church of England. And if you don't know, Isaac Watts is the person who created that wonderful Christmas carol that is so popular that we sang to open our service today, Joy to the World. But when he was 18 years old, he dared criticize the Anglican Church for their music. And to make things worse, his father was a high deacon in the church. So when young Isaac came to his father with complaints, his father said, as most parents would say to their children, well, if the hymns are good enough for your grandfather and good enough for your father, well, then they should be good enough for you too. Well, young Isaac wasn't buying into that. He said, Father, they will never be good enough. The church needs better music. The church is meant to be a place of joy. It's meant to be a place of singing. And his father, a little angry at this point, says, okay, well then, you think you can do better? You write a hymn. Let me see what you can do. And Isaac said, well, it just so happens I have written a hymn. And he said to his father, let me share it with you. And his father was amazed. Because to Isaac, this is what singing should have meant. It was not Joy to the World yet. He wrote a whole series. In fact, his father took this hymn to church the next Sunday, and they were just amazed by it as well. And Isaac was asked to write another hymn for the next Sunday, and that continued for 222 consecutive Sundays. Over 4 years, this young man wrote a hymn every Sunday. Isaac Watts single-handedly revolutionized congregational singing in the Anglican Church. And we have him to thank as well for our wonderful, especially Christmas. I love the Joy to the World. So in 1719, he prepared a monumental work that was called the Psalms of David Imitated, in which he set to music most of the Psalms in the Bible. And one of those Psalms was Psalm 98. Now listen to this. Make a joyful noise to the Lord. All the earth break forth into joyous song and sing praises. Sound familiar? Joy to the World came out of that psalm. And Isaac Watts wrote one of his best beloved Christmas carols based on Psalm 98. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. Let heaven and nature sing. Now, we don't really know the original music because the tune that we now know was adopted years later. But Charles Fillmore wrote in his book, Atom Smashing Power of Mind, and I love this. He said, "Joyful music is one of the finer things in life. Those who do not expand their minds to enjoying the finer things of life will be out of step with the times. We must, you and I, we must expand our minds. And then when we do, we will pick up music that is already there within divine mind, a music that is in the heavens. It's already there." He says it is there, but we must attune our minds to it. And this idea is one of the core beliefs in Unity, that what we want and what we desire is already exists in the universe. It's one of our basic Unity tenets. What we want or desire already exists in the universe. Our job, our role is to be aware of it, to align with it in order to be able to receive it. Another wonderful story about music that I love is just imagine that you're in Princeton, New Jersey, and you're one of the carolers going door to door in this quaint little village. And the snow is very lightly falling. And you pause in front of this house of this old violinist. And you begin to sing, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how sweet we see thee lie." And all of a sudden the door opens and there's this old violinist standing there with his violin. And he begins to play his beloved instrument through each verse of the song. "Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by." And at the end of the song, you quietly turn, along with the other carolers, in order not to disturb the sacred moment, the sacredness of that moment. You turn and begin to walk away as the old violinist closes the door to his house. Now, what you don't know is that that violin, that seasoned violin, was brought out of retirement for one final spontaneous recital. And the other thing that you don't know is that this old violinist, he had been offered, this old violinist who had absolutely no reason to celebrate Christmas because he was a Jew. But he was so revered that he was offered, he could have had the presidency of Israel, could have been his. Now, most musicians will say that every great genius has an idol. Not just musicians, but a lot of great people have idols, people they respect, that they look up to. And this old violinist, his idol was Mozart. He said of his idol, I really began to learn only when I was about 13 years old. Mainly, I had fallen in love with Mozart's sonatas. The attempt to reproduce their singular grace compelled me to improve my technique. I believe on the whole that love is a much better teacher than a sense of duty. With me, it certainly was. And to this old violinist, Mozart's music was pure. It was almost, he said, as if it was there in the universe, just waiting to be discovered by the master. And this old violinist, he did not really see Mozart just as a composer. He saw him as an explorer, a discoverer of this universal music that is just waiting to be discovered in the universe of divine mind. And it was very odd that this old violinist would have Mozart as his idol, because more logically it should have been Sir Isaac Newton. Because this old violinist whose idol was Mozart, this revered scientist, who was offered the presidency of the state of Israel, was a man who altered the meaning of infinity. Does anybody know who it was? Albert Einstein. How many of you knew he was an incredible violinist? Not if you heard it in the first service. Charles Fillmore was a contemporary of Albert Einstein. And this is what he said. He said, Professor Einstein is considered the greatest mathematical genius of our time. The scientific world does not connect his insight into scientific principles with his religious life, but he freely states that he worships God. And he says the voice of God comes from within. And Albert Einstein once said, something tells me what I must do every day. He listened to that still small voice. Something tells me what to do every day. Perhaps, he said, we live best and do things best when we're not too conscious of how or why we do them. Now, it's best, we talk about that a lot in Unity, listening to that voice of God, that still small voice within. Let it guide you. And so Einstein was open to receiving God's gifts as flashes of insight, flashes of inspiration, and we too can receive the gifts of God in the very same way. And they come not only on Christmas Day, but 365 days a year. And our job is to be open to these gifts and to be receptive to receiving them. And so let's get back to Joy to the World for a moment. The version that we know today was set to a musical theme adopted by a minister, Dr. Lowell Mason. And that theme was taken from the musical work of George Frederick Handel. We know that work today as, anybody know? The Messiah. The Messiah, which was an inspired work that we hear a lot during Christmas, and there's sing-alongs that happen as well. But in August of 1741, Handel wrote the Messiah in 23 days. He never left his home for 23 days, sleeping and eating only when it occurred to him. And it was said that he was so spiritually moved after writing the Hallelujah chorus that tears were just streaming down his face. And he called all of his servants to him, and he said, My God, I did think that I saw the heavens open before me, and I saw the great God himself. And he did. He received those divine ideas, those great ideas as a flash of inspiration. A gift from God, which then became a gift for all humanity. Charles Fillmore says, the musical genius hears the music in a flash and often is at wit's end to transcribe it fast enough. And I know a lot of musicians talk about that. Artists, also writers. Charles Fillmore goes on saying, many an immortal poem or prose work as well has been flashed into the mind of the author without any apparent effort on his part. But if all the prayers and mind efforts of literary geniuses were inquired into, it would be found that there had been a special flash of inspiration from the divine mind of God. And we all have that ability to be that open, receptive, receptive like Mary, that wonderful virgin consciousness into which the Christ was born. We have that ability to be that connected and that open and receptive to what's going on in divine mind. And at Christmas, we remind ourselves of that connection. We remind ourselves that something magical is happening in you and I, in us right now. There is a gift. It is a gift from God, this divine flash of inspiration and intuition and insight. The music that's playing in our soul, the healing that's taking place in our body, the miracle of the birth of the Christ within us. It's a gift that proclaims joy to the world. Joy to the world. The Christ is Merry Christmas. The Christmas is now. It's Christmas. Joy to the world. And this inspiration is going on, this celebration is going on within every single one of us. Don't you feel it? That joy that is bubbling up. It's going on within each one of us right now. Right now. And the tree is decorated. The lights are lit. The Christ is born in the manger of your heart. Merry Christmas. Joy to the world. The Lord is come. Repeat the sounding joy. And so may this be the merriest Christmas, the most holy holiday season ever. And my prayer and my wish for each one of us is that we truly know the joy of Christmas. Blessings. Have a very Merry Christmas.